Hi guys, you should have these notes comparing and ordering fractions. If you didn't get them in class, then obviously you can go to Canvas and print them. We're going to fold these over in half like this, and on the outside we're going to write that this is lesson 4G, and we're going to write our I can statement. I can compare and order fractions. So we're moving on in our fractions unit here. We've talked about greatest common factor, least common multiple. We've talked about reducing. We've talked about changing from improper fractions to proper fractions and back again. So mixed numbers to improper fractions. So here we go. All right. Comparing and ordering fractions. When looking at different fractions, the most important thing is to always have the same denominators in all fractions. That's called common denominators. So if the denominators are the same, then you can go ahead and compare the numerators and to tell which fraction is bigger and which fraction is smaller. So here we've got two fractions. These fractions show that they do have the same denominator. And again, that's essential. You have to look at those denominators before you can move on. Same denominators. Keynote, if the fractions have the same denominator, then you can just look at the numerators to compare them. So once we've got a common denominator, we can really just ignore the denominators and compare the numerators. So if the denominators are different, then we'll have to get common denominators. I'm going to bump back up here for a minute. So if I'm comparing two fractions, I've got 1/8 and 5/8 here. I know that 1/8 is smaller than 5/8 because they both have the same denominator, and 1 is a lower number than 5. Alrighty. So if we have different denominators, then we're going to find the same denominator. We're going to find a common denominator. So if the denominators are different, then we want to find the same denominator. And just a reminder, that's called a common denominator, because it's the same in all the fractions that you're dealing with. So 2/3 and 3/4, they do not have the same denominator. So we're going to find the common denominator, or the LCM, and one way to do that is to list the multiples of each number until you find the lowest common multiple. So I've got the multiples of 3 here. They're 3. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 6 is 18. And then start with my 4. 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and so on, until you find a spot where you have the same number in both lists of your multiples. So look at the least number they have in common, the least common multiple. And that becomes your new numerator. So we're going to take 2/3 and 3/4, and we're going to change it into 12ths. Now comes the numerator part. That can be a little bit tricky. All right, a key note, whatever you multiply the old denominator by to get the new denominator, multiply the old numerator by to get the new numerator. In other words, we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. So here you can see we've got 2/3, and we want to change it into a fraction with 12ths in the denominator. So we multiply 3 times 4 to get 12ths. Therefore, we'll multiply 2, the numerator, by 4 to get 8ths, 8 12ths. And then our second fraction, 3/4, in order to make the 4 a 12, we have to multiply by 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 would be 9. Now we've got our two new fractions, and they have the same denominator. We're looking at 8/12 and 9/12. And 9/12 is equal to 3/4. They're the same amount. If you ate 3/4 of a pizza or 9/12 of a pizza, you'd be eating the same amount. 2/3 and 8/12, same amount. So now that we have the new fractions with the same denominator, we can tell, we can look at them, and we can see that 2/3 is less than 3/4. And so that's how we would write it. 2/3 is less than 3/4. Notice I went back to our original fractions in order to write my equivalency statement. In this case, it's not an equivalency statement, it's a less than statement, inequality statement. Okay, so now we're going to compare these fractions using inequalities or equal signs. And so I look first of all for the first one, 1/4 and 3/8. I look at my denominators, they are not the same. If I make a list of fourths and eighths in their multiples, so 4, 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to stop there because the first multiple for 8 is 8, right? 1 times 8 is 8. All right, so we're going to take 1/4 and change it into eighths, and we're going to take 3/8, and of course we don't have to change anything there because it's already in eighths. In order to change this 1/4 fraction into eighths, we have to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2. Whatever we do to the denominator, we have to also do to that numerator. So 4 times 2 is 8, 1 times 2 is 2. Now I can make a comparison. I see that 1/4 is equal to 2/8, and 3/8 of course is equal to 3/8. So 1/4 is less than 3/8. So I would write 1/4 is less than 3/8. Okay, you try the next two, and we'll check those when you come into class. Now this one's a little bit tricky because it's got 3 numbers in it, but you can do it. You still are going to find a common denominator and order them from least to greatest. So give those a try, and we'll check those when I see you in class. Don't forget to go on. There's another video for this lesson as well, so make sure you watch the second video and take your notes over that second sheet.